Hello, Grade 5. Our science lesson for this week is about ecosystems. Throughout this lesson, we are going to see what an ecosystem is, and we are going to explain how organisms interact with living and non-living things in their ecosystems. First of all, let us start by learning what is an ecosystem. But before, let us give a definition to the word environment. An organism's environment is all the living and non-living things that surround and affect the organism. You are surrounded by many things that make your environment suitable for you to live in. Environments include biotic and abiotic parts. What are biotic parts? Biotic parts are the living things in an environment, for example, plants and animals. Abiotic parts are the non-living things. Climate, water, soil, and nutrients are all examples of abiotic parts. So if we look at this diagram, we can see that the ecosystem has biotic components and abiotic components. Plants and animals are considered as biotic components. Soil, air, sunlight, and water are considered as abiotic components. The abiotic parts of an environment have an important role. Temperature and amount of water, for example, affect which plants and animals can live in a place. Now, let's see what is an ecosystem. By definition, an ecosystem is all the organisms living in a place together with their environment. An ecosystem can be huge, such as a large forest, or it can be small, such as a mud puddle. Now, let us discover what are parts of the ecosystem. Each ecosystem contains different groups of living things. A population is a group of organisms of the same species in an ecosystem. For example, if we look at the picture, we can see a savanna ecosystem. A savanna ecosystem may contain a population of zebras as well as lions. It also contains populations of grasses and trees. Now, a community consists of all the populations that live and interact in an area. Populations in every ecosystem need food, water, shelter, and space to live. The interaction between populations to meet needs is called competition. So, populations that compete and obtain enough resources will survive, and those that cannot compete will not survive in the ecosystem. Now, competition also occurs within populations. The stronger individuals in a population are the ones that get the most food and take the best shelter for themselves. Weaker individuals may not survive. Let us continue with the parts of the ecosystem. An organism's habitat is the place where it lives within an ecosystem. An organism's niche is its complete role or function in its ecosystem. A niche is different from a habitat because it includes all the ways the organisms survive. If we look at the picture below, we can see that we have a comparison between a habitat and a niche. A habitat is where an organism lives. A niche is the role an organism plays in its habitat. For example, what it eats. Is it a predator or a prey? How does it find mating partners? Now let's talk about diversity. The word diverse means different in kind. Diversity is the variety of different species that live in an ecosystem. An ecosystem that is diverse contains a lot of species. Ecosystems without much diversity are inhabited by only few species. So the more types of organisms in an ecosystem, the larger the web and the more resources available. So if we look at the first picture on the left, we can see a coral reef. This coral reef is a diverse ecosystem. Many populations live closely together here. In the second picture, we can see a rainforest. A rainforest is a diverse ecosystem. The warm temperature and high rainfall support many different populations. In the last picture, The cold Arctic is a less diverse ecosystem. The polar bear is one of a small number of large organisms that can survive there. Now, let's move to the changes in the environment. All environments change over time. Some changes happen slowly while others occur quickly. An ice age, which is a slow change in the environment, happens when Earth's temperatures are colder than normal for a very long time, so large areas of land are covered with ice for thousands of years. Volcanic eruptions can quickly change the environment. Volcanic eruptions can be destructive, but they can also form entirely new land that will eventually be inhabited by plants and animals and become an ecosystem. Now we are going to see how do environmental changes affect organisms. Ecosystems change all the time, but the changes are often slow that they are hard to notice. The gradual change of organisms in an ecosystem is called succession. The picture below shows how bare rock can change into an ecosystem filled with living things. So this picture shows a primary succession. Primary succession begins on bare rock, such as after a volcano erupts. Dust settles in cracks in the rocks. The first organisms to colonize are called pioneer species. They break down the rock as they grow, producing soil. When they die, their litter decays, adding nutrients to the soil. As soil develops, plants can begin to grow, mosses flourish, and they help produce more soil. The soil becomes thicker and bigger plants take hold. Eventually, trees grow and a mature, stable community establishes itself. Now we are going to see a secondary succession. A secondary succession occurs when an ecosystem has been disturbed but soil is still present. Areas burned by forest fires undergo secondary succession. Secondary succession occurs more quickly than primary succession. The existing soil usually contains seeds and roots that sprout and grow after the fire is over. The first plants to grow tend to be hardy shrubs and grasses. Gradually, larger plants colonize the burned area. Animals also return. Eventually, a stable ecological community re-establishes itself. Now we are going to see that humans change the environment too. Humans are not outside of the environment, and we have a large impact on our ecosystems. The effects of humans on the environment can be both harmful and beneficial. Human activities can harm an ecosystem. For example, people mine coal to produce energy for homes and businesses. Another example, humans produce a large amount of waste that is disposed of as trash. Most trash ends up in landfills causing water, soil, and air pollution. We have to know that not all changes by humans are harmful. People work to protect their environment and to protect organisms from harm as a result of ecosystem change. Protecting ecosystems and the organisms living in them is called conservation. For example, people try to restore habitats and repair damaged ecosystems by replanting trees and cleaning up pollution. Another example, people care for animals injured or orphaned by these disasters. Finally, we are going to talk about extinction. Some living things change when their environment changes. Some living things move to new places while others do not survive. Millions of years ago, Earth was covered with giant reptiles. Now, most of those reptiles are extinct. Extinction happens when all the members of a certain species die. Giant reptiles, such as the Tyrannosaurus rex, lived in a time in which Earth was warm. Over time, the environment cooled and many of the reptiles could not survive. In the picture below, we can see one of those giant reptiles. It is called Tyrannosaurus rex. That's it for today, grade 5. Thank you for watching.